Ẹ̀yin tèmi báwo ni o ṣé wà? Lẹ́lẹ́lẹ́lẹ́lẹ́lẹ́lẹ́lẹ́ ṣé wà? Welcome to BR Fashion Tutorial. I remain your favorite tutor, Bukola Rose. I'm going to take you on this video step-by-step method on drafting this beautiful 6-piece skirt with tape. And this method I'm teaching you is the easiest I've ever seen. Welcome to class. Required measurements for this work is waist circumference, hip circumference, knee length, and skirt length. It's going to be high waist skirt because of the style line that I'm creating on it. I'm going to work on 3 pieces: center front, center back, and side for front and back. I will maintain the length of this pattern because it is exactly the length of my skirt, and I'm going to work on the center front first. Remember that we are working on 6 pieces, which means we need 3 pieces for the front and 3 pieces for the back. So I will explain how I got the block for the center front, but before that, let me explain those lines you're seeing. So the edge of my pattern is going to stand as my waistline. From there, I came down with 8 inches to get my hip line. 8 inches is okay for me. It actually varies, but 8 inches can work for everyone. So I'm going to insert my knee length, and that is what you see me doing right now. From my knee length, I will come up with 5 inches. You can actually do 3 inches or 2 inches, but I want to go far from my knee length, so 5 inches is okay for me, and that's what you see me explaining right there. Then I'm going to create an effect around the above the knee for all of my work, but I want to explain the center front first. How I got my center front panel: I used my bust span divided by 2, and that is that line that you see me showing you there. So now I'm going to go in from my above the knee. I'm going to go in for center front with 0.25. Although it is small, but trust me, it will definitely have some effects when you're done with your work, and that is what you see me marking. Then I will connect it to the hip line. Let it enter the hip line. As small as it is, by the time you are done joining your fabric, you will see the effects. Because when this, we assume that this is on fold. We assume that the paper is on fold. By the time you open up your fabric, that means you took what? 0.5 out of the measurements you have. That means if you have 7 here, because when you open it up, it's going to give you 7. The 3.5 inch that we use for the bust span is going to give you 7. So by the time you open it, instead of you having 7 around the above knee, you're going to have what? 6.5. So you still have that tightening effect around your knee area. That's 0.25. I'm going to do the same thing here. On the knee area, I'm going to take away the 0.25 as well. I'm going to connect it to the length, like so. That's all for center front for now. So now let's work on center back. The first thing I'm going to do is what? I'm going to take in my zip bunch around the waist and around above knee. So I'm going to use 0.5 for that. For the tightening, 0.5. Then I'll come to this above the knee, then mark the same 0.5. Make sure you leave like 2 inches here, 2 inches here. Do you get it? Leave about 2 inches, or you can do 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches is okay for me. Leave about 1.5 inches, I mean, above your hip line to connect with the zip bunch you took away. So about 1.5, then 1.5 again before the hip line. I hope it's clear to you. Let me take that again. You go up with 1.5 or 2 inches on the hip line. Don't connect the line directly to the hip line. Go up with 1.5 or 2 inches. Then do the same thing before the hip line. And you connect the zip bulge and the tie or tightening, whatever you call it. Either zip bulge or tightening. Connect it to that line. Okay, so to give you nice effects. So the next thing I'm going to do is to connect that line down to the length of my skirt. So that means I'm going to take in 0.5 as well. Then I'll connect that line. So all these parts are going off. They are all going off. So the next thing I'm going to do on the back panel, I mean the center back, is to do what? To mark my zipper allowance. And I'm going to use 1 inch. It's okay for me. I'll just mark 1 inch for the zipper allowance, following the shape I already created here. 1 inch for the zipper allowance. So this is going to serve as our zipper allowance. Then I can mark the bust pan like I did for the center front panel. I can mark the bust pan of 3.5 inches. That's what I'm going to use for the center back panel as well. So I'm going to mark it following the shape all the way down. 3.5 inches. So having marked my tightening for the back panel, I mean the center back, the next thing to do now is to work on the side panel, because we are done with the center front and center back. So the next thing is to do what? To work on the side panel. And the side panel is the same for the front and the back. So that means I'm going to make just one pattern for both. Then I'm going to use it to cut 4 fabric. I'll cut it on 4 fabric, 2 for the front and 2 for the back. So the next thing to do now is to create a straight line as the start point. As you can see, this is not straight, it's bent. So I need to create a straight line as a start point for my panel. It is necessary to indicate that all these parts are going to be removed, so that by the time you are cutting out your panel, you won't forget to cut them off. So now I've already created a straight line as a start point for the side panel. So this time around, we are going to work with our hip and waist measurements. You know, we've ignored it since we've been working with our bust pan. So we are going to work with our hip and waist measurements right now. I have been working with 3.5 inches, ignoring the waist measurements and the hip circumference, because the distance between my nipples is 7 inches. So divided by 2 is 3.5 inches. You know, we assume that our pattern like this represents the fabric being folded into 2. So that means when you open up your fabric, it will give you what? 7 inches altogether for the front, then the back as well, 7 inches. So we are going to add the 7 inches together for center front panel and center back panel. We will add it, which is going to give us what? 14 inches. So my hip measurement is 35 inches and my waist measurement is 28 inches. So I need to subtract what I have for the front center back and the back center back. I need to subtract it from my measurement before working on the side pattern. This is the reason why some people, they used to have excess fabric after cutting out their fabric in 6 places. I mean the 6 pieces. After cutting it out, it's because they don't do the accurate calculation for the 6 pieces. So first thing we do now, we work on center front and center back, ignoring our measurements. I mean the waist circumference and the hip circumference. We ignore it and we use our bust pan to work on the center and the center front and the center back. So we need to take away what we already have. We need to take it away from the waist circumference and the hip circumference. So whatever you are left with is what you will use for the side. Whatever you are left with is what you will use for the side. So the example I'm working with now, which is my measurement, I took out 14 inches, which is the bust span times 2. That is center front and center back panel. So 7 plus 7 gives me 14. I took it away from my 28 inches for the waist. After taking that away, it gives me 14 inches. So that 14 inches, remember that the side we are working with is 4. We need 4 pieces for the side, 2 for the front and 2 for the back. So we need to divide it by 4. That means the waist that I'm going to work on is going to be the same 3.5 inches. For my own measurement, it's going to be the same 3.5 inches. So this is the waist circumference I'm going to use. So for the hip circumference, my hip circumference is 35 inches. So I took away the 14 inches which I already have for the center front and the center back panel. I took it away from the 35 inches. It gives me 21 inches. So that 21 inches now, I need to divide it by 4 because I'm working on what? 4 pieces for the sides, for the 2 sides of front and 2 sides for back. So divided by 4 gives me what? 5.25 inches. That is my new hip circumference that I'm going to use for the side panel. I hope it is clear to us. Okay, let me quickly run that again. I've been working with 3.5 because the bust span of my measurement is what? 7 inches. So we assume that we have our fabric folded into 2, which is also our pattern. So we have to divide it by 2. So that's the reason why I've been using 3.5. I use 3.5 for the center front, 3.5 for the center back. So right now, we need to insert our measurement on the pattern. And that is going to be on what? The side pattern. We are going to effect our measurement on the side pattern. So for the side pattern now, we can't just work on the 28 inches and the 35 inches for my hip. As I'm going to have excess. So that means I need to take away what I've already have on my center front and on my center back. So the 7 inches, because when I open my center front wide and I open the center back, it's going to give me 7 inches both. So 7 inches plus 7 inches is 14 inches. So now I need to take away the 14 inches from my waist circumference. 14 minus 28 gives me 14. That 14 now, remember we are working on four sides. 4 sides, 2 for the front and 2 for the back. So we need to divide it by that 4. It gives me 3.5 inches. That's what I'm going to work on. Then the hip circumference as well. 35 inches minus, we are going to take away that 14 inches. 7 for front, 7 for back. We are going to take it away from that 35 inches. It gives me 21 inches. Whatever your own hip measurement is what you will calculate on. This is mine. So that 21 inches divided by 4 because we want to work on 4 sides. 2 panels for the front and 2 panels for the back. So we need to divide it by 4 and it gives us what? 5.25 inches. I hope it's clear. So now let's work. So I'm going to mark 3.5 inch for the waist. Then for the hip, I'm going to mark 5.25 for the hip. And I'll connect both. You can add allowance on your pattern and you can decide to add it on the fabric. I'll just add mine on the fabric. I'm okay with this. So that's for the hip. Then I'm going to come down to above the knee area. I will take away 0.5 from the hip line. This is 5.25. So for the knee line, I'm going to mark 4.75. I'm going to mark 4.75. Then I'll join it to the hip line. I will mark the same 4.75 on the length. I'm going to join it again. So I'll come back to the above the knee and go in with 0.5. You can do more or less, but 0.5 is okay for me. I'll blend it into the hip line. Now I need my French curve to create an effect around here. Okay, I'm still going to add flake on both sides. So the pattern is ready for cutting. I'll just cut out my panels. This is the side. As you can see, this is center back and the side. Although we are going to add flake to both sides from the above the knee. It's going to be like this. Then we open it up with a flake. Like this, there will be flake here. Okay, this is the center front with the side front, and we're going to insert flake at the above the knee. Assuming we open it like this, there will be flake to be free in between. You can see. If I divide my waist by 4, it's going to give me what we have here. Okay, my waist is 28, right? Can you see we have 7 inches here? My waist divided by 4 is what? 28. See what we have? 7 inches. So this calculation is accurate. This method is the best for 6 pieces. If I take the measurements for the hip, it's going to be the same thing. My hip divided by 4 is what? 8.75. You can see for the hip, I have 8.75 for the hip. 8.75 is what I have for the hip. The calculation is accurate. This method is the easiest and perfect. If I do the same thing for the back, it's still going to give you the same measurement. For the back, ignoring the zipper allowance, you can see it's 7 inches on dots for the waist. My waist is 28. It's giving me what? 7 inches. My waist is 28, and having cut out my pattern, I have 7 inches for the waist. That is the side and this is the center. The same thing applicable for the hip. If I close it up here, it's going to give me 8.75 for my hip. Hip divided, that's why divided by 4, 8.75. So this method is very, very easy, and it will give you accurate measurements without you wasting your fabric. So now let's cut our fabric using the pattern. So I'm starting with the side pattern. I folded my fabric into 2 because I'm cutting 2 at once. I folded it into 2 using 14 inches. Then I marked the midpoint, which is 7 inches. I did the same thing for the bottom. Mark the midpoint, which is 7 inches. Then I drew a straight line to join those points together. So for the center panel now, I notched the center of the top. I'm going to pin it down like this, placing it at the midpoint that I marked. So I'm going to notch the center of the bottom as well, then pin it down. The length of the fabric I'm using is the same thing as the length of my pattern, so I will just leave it that way, then use the pieces of the fabric to hem the bottom part. 5 seam allowance for this side, that's what I'm going to use to join my fabric to the other panels. So for the other side, which is the edge of my panel, I'm going to add my seam allowance of more than 0.5 inch. It all depends on you. If you like, you can do 1.5 inches. If you like, you can do 2 inches. But for me, I'm going to use 2.5 inches because I'm going to pad the dress. I'm going to pad the skirt. So I'm going to use 2.5 inches because I need to add allowance for the hip and boot pad. So I'm going to add 2.5 inches and stop around my above the knee. Then I'm going to create my flake. I want the flake to be equal, and that's the reason why we place our pattern on the midpoint of the fabric, so that whatever flake we have here will be equal to what we have on the other side. So I'm going to have my 2.5 all the way, following the shape I have here. 2.5. So I'll bring my curve ruler to make some effects on this side. Just as we did here, I can balance it well using the curve ruler again. Okay, so now just join that line to the bottom. So I can cut out now. So this is what we have. Look at it on this side. So I have 2 already. I'm going to use this to cut 2 more. I'm going to use it to cut 2 more. And I will use it to cut 4 pieces on the lining. The same calculation used for the side is what I'm going to use for the center front and the center back. So I have my fabric folded into 2. I folded it on 14 inches. I marked 14 inches here. Then at the bottom part is also 14 inches. Then I divided it by 2, which is 7 inches. I marked a straight line on the midpoint. So I'm going to place my center front because it must not have any opening at the center. So I'm going to place it like this and I will pin it down. Then the center back, the zipper side doesn't need flake. The other side of it needs flake. The same thing applicable to center front. The center front doesn't need flake. The other side of it needs flake. The center back doesn't need flake. The other side of it needs flake. So I'm going to make use of the excess in between both panels. Is what I'm going to use for the flake. So I will just place my back panel this way so that I can use this side for the flake I want for the center front and the flake of the center back. I hope it's clear to us. So I will just pin down my pattern. The next thing to do is to add 0.5 inch seam allowance for the center back that I will use to turn on the lining. 0.5 inch for center back. Then for center front, I'm going to add 0.5 inch down to the above knee, this point. Then I will connect to my flake. I'm going to do the same thing for the back. I will add 0.5 inch down to the knee length and I will connect to my flake. Okay, let me start with this part. I'm adding 0.5 inch. Next is to use my French curve to blend this side. the same thing for the other side, which is the center back panel. Okay, so you see the center line that I used to divide the fabric into two. I will just connect down to that line. When you open up, the flare for the center front and the center back will be equal to the flare for the side. For both sides, for front and back, it's going to be equal, because I use 14 for that calculation and I also use 14 for this one. So when I open up the center front, it's going to be equal, exactly the same thing. That makes work perfect. So the next thing to do is to cut out. Mind you, 14 is not a standard. You can actually use 20 inches for yours. You can use 15 inches, you can use 18 inches, 17 inches. But most time I use 14 inches for mine. I mean for the flare, you know, the effect is on the bottom of your fabric. So I use 14 inches. I fold my fabric on 14 inches because that worked perfectly for me. I've been doing 6 pieces for myself for years. So, and this 14 inches amounts to exactly 3 yards. So 3 yards is okay for me. 3 yards is okay for me. You can actually use 4 yards. You can use 5 yards. It all depends on how you want your flare to flow. I'm going to attach tail to my skirt. So 3 yards is okay for me. This works perfectly for me. You can do 20 inches for yourself. It all depends. But this is okay for me. Both sides, and then center front, center back, everything amounts to 3 yards. So let's confirm what I said about the flare. You can see this is side. This is one side, either for front or the back. Then this is center front. This is center front. This is side. You can see the hip effect on this side. This is center front. Okay, let us check the flare. You can see it's equal. The flare is equal. This is center back. Let's check. If you open up the center back this way, although I added 0.5 allowance for the center of the center back panel, so that I will use that to join the fabric to the lining. But if you can check, you see that it is equal. The flare is the same for all the 6 pieces. Everything the same, everything accurate. Even the waist measurement, hip measurement, which also means circumference, they are perfect. The next thing to do is to cut lining for the front, center front panel and the center back panel. So guys, having cut out the 6 pieces and their lining, I will give the material a good press because sometimes it may be rough, so I need to press it before joining them together. After that, the first thing I'm going to do right there is to join the back pieces together, and you can see me arranging it. That is how I'm going to join it. See the center back, and I've already placed 2 sides beside it. So I'm going to work on that right now. I have joined the center back together, leaving the length of my zipper on the top. Then at the bottom part, I left my desired length for my tail. So I'm going to work on the tail right there. What you see me doing is folding my fabric on a triangle to cut out the tail for this skirt. So I'm just arranging my fabric to give me a smooth work. I want it to be equal. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to measure out the length that I left for the tail on my center back, as you see me demonstrating there. So I'm going to use that same length, and you can actually place it the way I did. I think I'm giving you two options there. You can place it that way and mark out the length, or you use measuring tape to measure it, and you measure it on your fabric that you want to use for the tail, as you see me doing. So after marking that, you're going to join the points together with your ruler. Then the next thing you're going to do is to work on the hem of the tail. So I'm going to connect that point down to the other edge of my material. Please don't forget, I'm actually working on the side that is open. I mean the side that I folded open, not the other edge that is unopened. I hope it's clear to you. So I'm cutting out the tail already. Then I will go ahead and join it to the part I left for this tail to stay on my skirts, which is the center back. And then I will join the center back to the both side of the back piece. That is what you see me demonstrating. This is how you're going to join the tail to it, and then you're going to join the center back to both sides of the back pieces. Then I'm done. I want to work on the front pieces. I place the center front at the middle, then both sides beside it, and I'm going to join it the way you see me demonstrating right there. I'm going to join it. Every action I do for the front and the back pieces, I'm going to repeat everything on the lining. Then I will join the front and back piece together. Okay guys, right now I want to work on the material that I will use to hem my skirts, and I'm using crinoline. I will cover it with my Ankara piece as demonstrated. The length of that crinoline is 2 inches, so I want to cover it front and back. So I'm going to cut out the length, adding some allowance at the top to join it to my skirts. The reason why I'm doing this is because, number one, I want some effects around the hem of my skirt. Then number two, the length of my skirt is exactly the length of the Ankara fabric I'm using, which is 45 inches. And remember that by the time I stitch, some of these inches will go off, even if it is just 1 inch. So, and I want my skirt to flow very well. I don't want my shoe to show. I want it to come down. So I just need to use this Ankara piece and piloni to hem my skirts. So right now I want to cut out the length I want. And how do I get that? You're going to calculate the length of the hem of your skirt. That's after joining everything, both the front piece and the back piece and the tail. Remember, you are joining the front and the back together using your hip circumference, waist circumference, and you join the remaining parts down to the hem. So you take your measuring tape and calculate what you have for your hem, and that is the length you're going to cut for this piloni. So I'm trying to fold that material, having know what I need. Then I'm going to cut out the length. I folded it and I'm going to cut out the length. I'm removing the tip of my Ankara fabric because I don't want that customized area to show at all. It's actually more than 0.5 inches. That is the reason why I remove it. So from there, I marked the length I want. Remember, I'm folding this fabric into 2. So that means I'm cutting it together for both front and back. So what I mean is that I'm covering it all through, not just one side. So I actually use 5 inches. 4 inches we go around as I'm showing you. Then I have my stitch allowance on top. Then stitch and press it for good results. So guys, I'm almost done with this work. I've already fixed my hip pads, I've attached the lining and hem it, I've sized it using my waist circumference and hip circumference. So right now I want to draw style line for this skirt because I'm wearing it on a corset jumpsuit, and I need to insert the length of my corset on this, which is 20 inches. From the waistline of my corset is 5 inches because the waistline of my corset is 15 inches. So from the waistline of the skirt, I marked down 5 inches to get the length, and that's the line you see there. Then I'm going to get the midpoint using my nipple point. You remember that that is what I used to cut this skirt. So I'm going to mark 3.5 inch from where I stitch my center front to the to the side front, and that is what I marked already. So I placed the center front of my corset on where I marked as the center front, as a midpoint for my skirt, and I drew out my shape of the corset on the skirt. So I'm done doing that. The next thing I'm going to do right now is to fold this skirt into two so that what I'm cutting out is going to be accurate on both sides. So I'm going to leave allowance of 0.5 inch from where I marked, then cut out the shape. I'm done doing that, and I repeat the same action for the back. So right now I want to insert my zipper. When I'm done inserting the zipper where I'm showing you right there, I will go ahead and use bias to hem the skirts at the top, and I'm done. This is the outcome of what we've done so far. This is the skirt. You can see how beautiful it is, front and back. See the tail, see everything. Look at the hem, look at the crinoline on the floor. That is it. You can see that effect there. So beautiful. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, give this video thumbs up, and share with your friends. I remain your favorite tutor, Bukola Rose, and we are on all social media platforms as BR Fashion TV. Thanks for watching. Bye.